Welcome to our making of the Afterparty panel. I'm Joyce Eng here with Christopher Rosen from Gold Derby, and we are joined today by creator, executive producer, and director Chris Miller, cinematographer Carl Herse, editor Joel Negron, and writer and songwriter Jack Dolgen. Thank you all for being here. I just named this panel like 10 seconds ago. How great is this panel? So it's gonna be great.
It's pretty great.
Yeah.
I can already tell.
But this is such a fun show with such a fun concept, a murder mystery told in a different genre every episode. So Chris, I have to start with you. How did you land on which genres to do for all 8 episodes? And were there just some no-brainers, like a rom-com that you just had to do?
Well, it was an interesting sort of chicken and egg situation because, we had these characters and you try to think about which genre fit the style of these characters, and then you would find a genre that maybe fit better, and then you'd change the character to fit the genre. So they kept evolving over the years. And in the writer's room, we were sort of, a rom-com for Anik seemed like a obvious no-brainer because his was a love story, and similarly for Brett, doing it as an action film made a lot of sense because the character sort of saw himself as this kind of like tough aggro guy, and similarly, doing Jaspers as a musical was the same sort of thing. But for some of them, it was we tried different hats on of different genres, and then we would land on what felt right and felt distinct from one another, and felt like it gave you a window into the character rather than just being some sort of random gimmick. And then, working with Carl as to how do we make sure that each of these things look distinct so that any frame of one, you would know exactly which person's story you were in. And then, and with Joel, figuring out how to edit them in different styles and make them feel with music and cutting and tone, make each of them feel unique so that none of them felt the same. It was a crazy undertaking.
So how much of that then, when you're doing it with Carl and Joel, are you pre-planning out, or versus like, how you're are you doing that on the fly to figure out how to make them all feel differently and like within the thing? Or is that something you painstakingly planned out beforehand and then we're like going into?
We did a lot of prep, right, Carl?
Yeah, a lot of really just kind of doing what we're doing right now. A lot of conversations where we just talk about movies we love, what the characters are like, and so much of it is written into the story, visually kind of what it should be. And then it's just kind of identifying which versions within each genre we wanted to kind of attach ourselves to became kind of the process early on.
Right. We didn't want it to be like a parody of any specific movie because that felt sort of cheap. It just sort of, these were the way these characters saw themselves, and they were, in a style of a number of different movies. But in an action movie, there's John Wick looking stuff, there's the classic like Die Hard looking stuff, there's Fast and Furious looking stuff, and we try to come up with something that felt like its own look that was influenced by all of those things in different ways. And a lot of it was just sort of going like, well, this episode sort of exists in this color space, and that's different from how this other episode is. So in figuring out what's the aspect ratio, what kind of cameras what camera work are we going to use, lenses, all that type of stuff, and have a little package in mind for each episode, and trying to push it and going like more lens flares, more.
Can I just say the other thing that was complicated too is that you shot it all out of order. You didn't shoot it like a regular episodic television. You shot the whole piece as a feature. So in trying to figure out all the different looks and the different genres and what you were getting, I mean, that must have been super complicated, as you were shooting it.
It certainly was. Like, we'd have those certain days where we'd be going from one look to the other of like the same moment in time. We'd be in the hallway shooting the rom-com scene, and then we would do the same scene as a thriller, and over the meal break the team would relight the whole thing, and everyone would wear slightly different costumes, and suddenly it was moody and spooky, and where it was like warm and glowing and sparkly before. And it was tough for the actors also to sort of switch modes of being like, okay, now I'm doing the sort of musical version of myself, but later on I'm going to be doing the gritty action movie version of myself. And so it was definitely took a great deal of planning. It was not as much as the cast was great at improvising, it was not an improvised production.
Well, I've talked to several of the actors and they've all basically talked about like how it was like a dream acting job because they just got to switch modes so often. But like from all of your perspectives, like I have to imagine it's kind of a dream job for all of you in a way, because generally on TV, when you start a show, you establish a look and you maintain it throughout the series, but you guys also get to switch it up every episode. So what was it like for all of you guys working behind the scenes?
I first heard about the show when I was talking with the show's production designer, and he kind of told me what it was, and I immediately was just like, oh my God, that is for me an absolute dream. And so immediately was like, how can I be involved with this? And yeah, it was it was definitely an undertaking, and we had lots of hacks on set. We had a cheat sheet for our different recipes of what each genre would be and everything, and our crew got really into it. So every member of the camera department, lighting, grip department, art department, costume, everyone really just got so into it. And it was such an interesting challenge that we only one time did we light a scene the wrong way, and like right before we were about to roll, I was like, wait a minute, Chris, what is hold on.
Yeah,
and was that?
There was one time when someone was wearing the wrong version of their jacket. They were wearing their action movie jacket instead of their musical jacket. And the changes in the costumes were very subtle, so you had to be really paying attention to notice. But yeah, it's fun because every day you're doing something different. When sitting in the editing room with Joel, luckily Joel's edited big action movies, he edited thrillers, he edited music videos, he's edited comedies, he's edited everything. So he was like, well, this is a trick that I do to make a jump scare work better, and this is a thing that often works for this type of thing. And having somebody who has all that experience and knowledge was really, really helpful, and because you can use all the different tools in the toolbox and all the different skills, and so every day was a new adventure.
Yeah, and it definitely was a dream job because doing all the different genres in one complete story was really, really fun. I remember when Chris first called me about it, he told me the premise, and he told me what he was going to do, and I said, because I know he does comedy, I says, is it a comedy? Because there's all the different genres, and then he said, yeah, it is, and I said, I'm totally in. So, and it was a lot of fun. It was a lot of fun. Every day I came in, I had a different scene to cut. But one of them was action, one of them was thriller. The musical was amazing. That was so much fun to cut. That was just one of the funnest days of my career that day.
and the score too, right, Chris? Like the score from Daniel, like just from my perspective, the combination of like unbelievable skill and talent from all of you, and then add Daniel Pemberton, who did the score, who was doing the same chameleon work that Carl and Joel were doing in his department, the costume people were doing in his department, transitioning from like one to the other. I wish he were here to complain about how much work it was.
No, I mean, we really did, because normally when you do music for a show, you're like, okay, here's the theme, here's the happy part, here's the emotional part, here's the scary and sad part. Okay, you guys go just mix every episode with these like 6 cues. But this show, poor Daniel, every episode had, like 25 plus minutes of bespoke original music that didn't work for any other episode. So he was like, you jerks, making me like, it was so much work. And, with a full orchestra for most of it. And it was intense. He got COVID during it, and we were like, but we're not done. We still have 10 more cues. And so from his bed, he was writing music. It was a lot. It was a huge undertaking, but the great part about working with incredibly talented people is that it makes it fun and easy. I like working with Jack, who is an incredible writer and an incredible songwriter. Having like people who are multi-talented like that on the team is fantastic. And the the musical episode was one of the ones that was the hardest to do. It took the most prep, getting getting a bunch of songs that had to be good songs, that had to drive the story forward. They couldn't just be like, okay, now we're going to break and do a song about nothing and then carry on with the story. They had to be integral to the story and catchy. And then we had to have good choreography that was done by Kat Burns, who's a great choreographer. And Ben and everybody did an amazing job of singing and dancing and acting while singing and dancing, which is harder than you might expect. I cast Ben. I was like, oh wait, can you sing? I was like, yeah, I can carry a tune. Oh my god, I figured you could.
Rosen says he has the voice of an angel, and I agree.
Oh yeah,
and the music for sure.
The musical episode is our favorite.
The musical one is our favorite. I was going to say Ben's. I got run over by Alexis. I still hear from Parks and Rec.
Oh yeah, exactly. That was the amount of singing that I knew of him was his John Raffio singing.
It's great.
That was his reel. That was his demo.
Which I mean, it isn't going to exactly get you a job on Broadway from those clips, but he really put in a lot of time and effort, like doing a great job, like mastering those songs, and it's exhausting trying to act while singing and dancing. It's I don't envy it for anyone.
I also have to mention the casting of the other dancers. They're all middle-aged dancers, and we had a blast picking the ones out. Chris and I would always say, "Oh, I like that one." No, I like that person.
That's right. Yeah, because we wanted it. In his episode, the reunion goers were the dancers. We didn't want like people that looked like they were young professional dancers. They all had to look like people who were like balding and like had a little bit of a punch. But
they're here for a high school reunion, so
exactly. If you finding balding dancers with a punch is surprisingly difficult.
Well, Jack, you wrote that episode, and also the 3 songs, absolute bangers. I play them all the time. Spotify made me a Ben Schwartz mix because I play them so often. So can you talk about writing the episode and those 3 songs, the 2 shots, yeah, sure, whatever, and 3 dots from stardom?
Well, this is basically the cushiest writing gig that anyone's ever had in television comedy, I think, because I came in as kind of like the musical specialist guy, right, for this episode, and Chris and this unbelievable group of writers, Anthony King and the whole writing staff, had already worked out so much stuff by the time I jumped onto the Zoom writers room. What a trip that is. And so they had just crafted this unbelievable whole canon and story and everything, and really like worked out a lot of the brilliance of the musical episode. I know a lot of people know this, but like there's the name of the writer on the episode of television, but it really is a group effort for every TV episode, and it's really the showrunner and the entire writing staff in team. And this was a really good example of that because so much brilliance was already crafted, and I got to just join the fun with Chris and all these brilliant people, and like just play with screws and annoy everyone with my 2 cents about everything. And it was so fun to write because the character point of view was so specific and so rich, and it was so clear, what he wanted and what his emotional point of view was. And the songs were just really natural, downstream pieces that came from his point of view within the certain spots of the plot. And so I kind of got the ball rolling, and then was really like super lucky to have John LaJoy come on, who I wish he was here because he's just so nice. John LaJoy is the nicest Canadian man. I know that's a redundancy, but and he really came on and really made the songs like so much better, so hooky, so great. He's an unbelievable comedy songwriter, and basically the songs you hear in the show are really like in large part John's working with Chris and Daniel Pemberton and making these things really fantastic. So I really have like this was like paying for coach and getting first class for me in terms of writing on the Afterparty.
John is a real genius, and we worked with him on Lego too, and had a great experience with him. He's just very, very funny and talented guy in many rounds. But Jack is also being very modest, and he was an integral part of making this. Making the show work and making the episode in particular work, because you're like, oh, we're going to do a musical and here's some ideas for songs, but there's so many different types of musicals and there's so many different types ways to do it, and it was Jack going like, well, I think this one can be a rap, and I think this one could be like one of those like pop musical type of things, and this one could be like a soulful ballad, that really allowed us to have each of the songs feel like its own thing. And it was another thing, like talking with Carl about like, well, how do we shoot a musical? I mean, musical is a big, broad category, and we wanted each of them to feel like its own style. And it was because of all of the people here on this Zoom and many more who were instrumental in figuring out how we could get each of them to be, emblematic of a different type of song in a musical and a different way of shooting. We looked at a lot of music videos also to go like, well, is this more like a music video, or is this more like a adaptation of a Broadway musical, or what is this? And lots of discussions and lots of preparation, and that's
and that was a really fun episode because we had so many different looks. There were the 3 different numbers. There was the normal kind of baseline musical look of just for dialogue scenes between numbers and everything, and then our normal kind of parlor mystery interrogation look. So that was just the full range of the show is kind of expressed in that one episode, I feel like.
But the way each song was cut distinctively, and the way that worked with the choreography by Kat Burns, which is really, she's just truly the best at comedy choreography. There's just no one better. And the way that you cut it, each song really, like, they all just popped, like they sounded right. They were shot distinctly. The emotion was distinct. They were cut. They were directed distinctly. It was just like soup to nuts, really. Executionally
and they were
fantastic.
really funny, and they were really funny. The lyrics were just hilarious.
Amazing.
They're really funny. The 3 dots, the way that was executed too, in terms of choreography and photography, and the way that the actors, did that was really, really well done. But I have a question. Who wrote the MLK song? Because that song cracks me up every time.
Oh, that's Jack's. That JD Scape Diem. That's a Jack Dolgen special.
I have a.
Can tell it's late. It's called.
We need like the Scape Diem B-sides.
Right.
Oh God! Don't prompt me because I'll spend all night doing it. And I have a secret agenda in my TV career, which is to get ska into every TV show that I work on. I'm not doing great. I'm 50-50, but I'm really working way too hard on it. And I was very grateful to Chris for this opportunity.
Nice. Yes.
Well, someone once said that pop is just a fad and ska is forever.
A wise man once said, yes.
Chris, that's the funniest line. I don't know who wrote that, but that is the funniest line. It's so great.
I can't remember. I honestly can't remember. It's this show's such a group effort.
Yeah, fantastic.
I just want to quickly go back to 3 Dots from Stardom and what Joel, you were saying about the way it was shot. Because when I talked to Ben a couple weeks ago, he didn't realize that you guys just did 3 oneers for the whole song. Yeah. He just realized it in the moment. I was like, oh.
Oh, really? Yeah, those were when you do those complicated oneers, that on itself, this episode, like, you had so much preparation as far as like getting the songs written, getting the songs recorded, getting the choreography figured out. And getting everything, the lighting, the specialty lighting planned and all that type of stuff. But on top of that, when you end up doing like a wonder shot where you've got like a minute plus of a song that you're doing all in one with a bunch of choreography and things are happening and someone's grabbing a champagne bottle and tossing it over their shoulder and another person's catching it and you're bumping a person out of the way with a guitar and then you have to lay on the thing just right and the camera has to move along with it and not miss anything. It's one of those things where you have to do rehearsal, and then you shoot it 15 times until you get it right. And then you're like, we got it, we're done. But I love doing that type of stuff because everybody the whole crew gets really into it and everyone's rooting for everything, every little thing to go off correctly. And you get to add little things along the way that you weren't even thinking of. And when it works, everyone just is thrilled. And so it was, again, it was a really joyous experience making this show, as hard as it was and ambitious as it was. And I also think it partially was because it was during COVID when no one had left their houses for a while and everyone was just happy to be amongst other human beings. But everyone had such a great attitude about it, and it was fun coming into work in a way that even more so than a normal situation.
What was something that you added in that you were like, after doing it like 15 times or whatever?
With bumping the guy with the guitar butt, there's a shot in the middle of that thing. He's just so engaged in his song, he doesn't realize he's knocking a guy onto the floor, and we end up like grabbing like a stunt guy to do it because the guy that was there was like, well, we don't want to like actually accidentally knock him over and a lot of times when we were doing the rehearsals, we realized that he should be using his phone as the guitar pick also, which was another little late add in it, that I think was really helpful.
And
Chris is such a detailed director too. Like as a writer director, when I watch the show, I'm still so blown away by the level of detail and the amount of effort that goes into a little tiny passing joke, or detail like the Hall & Oates thing gets an entire expand every little thing, and so it's just it's like you watch the Afterparty and you are watching kind of like a mastermind, it's a team effort, but Chris is sort of helm of the ship, and the overall direction of the entire piece on a writing and directing level is it's a very you're in this dude's brain, and it's a very fun place to hang out.
It's a scary place to live.
Well, with that regard to detail though too, so from a clue standpoint, I know you guys have talked about this, but I was rewatching it this weekend because we're gonna do this, and I was so excited. Yeah, there's one part where you have, I think it's the tour shirt, and it ends up being a clue to say that it's not Mad Dog, right? Or not,
right.
Not Tiffany Haddish's character. And I was like, it's on there for literally a split second. And I know people picked that up, but how did you expect people to be so hip to that kind of stuff with the attention?
I definitely was surprised how quick and intense the sort of Reddit, there's a group of folks on Reddit that got really into all the hidden coded messages and puzzles and ciphers that were nested into the show, because it was a real pain in the butt doing some of these. One of them required us changing a sign on the side of a school building every episode by one letter, so it'd spell something out. And it was one of these things that was not done in visual effects. It was someone would have to go no, because we weren't shooting in order either. No, today we're doing episode 7, so you got to go back and put this different letter on the side of the building. And so we had all sorts of those type of things. And the tour jacket one is one where you're if you're watching the show, you might go that's odd that they just are showing us this guy's tour jacket for a second. But if you're looking for puzzles, you're there must be something in there. And there was a very complicated puzzle involving cities that were named after presidents, and then putting the presidents in order, and then having the dates of the tour match letters of the alphabet that spelled out a message. But people got it and solved it within a half hour of the show coming on, dropping. So it seemed complicated to me, but it wasn't too complicated for this group.
So, Chris, is that a success or a failure of that puzzle?
I think it's a total. I mean, is a success in that people were like racing each other to try and find the puzzles and solve them. And
the Morse code that we had to put in visual effects wise, and I remember you talking about it. I'm like, why is there a light blinking behind those two people sitting on the bleachers?
It gets so distracting, and I was like, well, it's a secret message.
Get rid of it when we were coloring that episode. He's like, should we do something about that bling? I'm like, no, that's a thing. That's even if it is, it's important.
It is, it's madness. That's added. The show was already complicated enough not to add like having to hide coded messages in all the episodes. And now this season, the second season we're working on right now, we're nesting more, some simple ones and some very difficult ones. So we'll see.
Are you also looking for fake ones to throw people off the scent then as well?
Well, we did a little bit of that on the first season. We shot some things that we used as, to throw people off the scent. There was a photo we took of Zoe in a blonde wig in the bathroom that never happens in the show. And we did a couple other things like that. And then we had on the Apple TV Plus's Twitter feed post some photos from an episode, including that photo, and then quickly take it down. And then they all went, "Oh my God, someone's getting fired because they just blew a whole clue." But it was totally just to throw everybody off the scent.
You're playing the long game here, so.
Indeed. Unreliable narrator is part of the theme of the show. So.
I do want to touch on that, the unreliable narrator aspect, because I think the early episodes, like Anik, Brett, and Jasper, they're all heroes of their own stories, and their episodes really reflect that the way you shot it. But then as you get deeper into the season and the truth is revealed, it becomes more grounded, more realistic. Chelsea's episode is she's not confident like they are, and
right.
She has her own issues she's dealing with, and then Walt, obviously completely invisible.
Yeah. And Walt's probably the most realistic one of them all because he's not the hero of his own story.
Truly. And then it all kind of, it coalesces in the finale when you have, the first half is Maggie, a child. But then when Danner, puts everything together, I guess how did you guys come to establish the style of the truth at the end when it's all these different styles coming together, and she is going to tell you or lead Anik to figure out who killed Xavier?
Yeah, we're calling the way that Danner sort of overlaid all the different stories Danner vision, which was sort of a tool for saying okay, what we want to do is show each of these stories and then show how there were certain things that were the same, but one person's version was different, and that might be a clue as to who did it. And so part of that required us to shoot certain scenes in all these different styles and all these different lighting styles from the same angle and the same exact setup, so that they would basically overlay on top of each other, where all of the people and the furniture would line up exactly, and then one thing would be different. And we ended up doing it with Joel. We tried a bunch of different methods. The method that ended up being the best was sort of cutting between them at 3 frames a piece, so that they were and you could just see things stay the same, but lighting and color, and some of them were black and white. One of them was, one was animated, but even the animated shot, we had to block it and have it laid out so that all of the architecture and furniture was exactly the same, even though the characters were animated, so that you could tell that story. And that was another thing that was a real big pain in the ass, being okay, here's the spot that we shot the rom-com version of this, and now we're coming back and doing the scene for the action run, and now we have to line it exactly up. And we were making someone has to move that chair 3 inches to the left so that it matches exactly how it was when you did the last one. And that was a crazy idea.
And that was incredible blocking on your part as well, Chris. I mean, I remember when you first came in and started saying where everyone would be for this particular moment in the story when Anik wakes up, and how all of those different eye lines had to relate to each other and everything, and where everyone was. And, at this point, this, we had to start figuring that out pretty early. And so much of this was in Chris's head, so we really could see just how clearly he understood this world and the placement of everyone, the relationship between each other, and seeing that in the final episode, I think is very gratifying how all those stories, come together like that. It was pretty
right.
impressive.
Like you want that final episode to be as satisfying as possible, and in order to do that, you have to. One thing you want to do is like use everybody's story somehow, so none of the stories were irrelevant, and so that each person's story brought a little piece of the puzzle together. And you wanted to, the kind of mystery that I like is the one where you go like, of course, I should have seen it. I should have realized that was the thing that happened. That was the way that they did it, and that was the give it away. But I just didn't pay attention. If you want to do a fair play mystery, it can't just be like, oh, a tiger got him, out of nowhere. It has to be, something that you could have figured out. And but hopefully, if you're just a casual viewer, it would be surprising. But if you are an intrepid viewer who watches and freeze frames things and pays attention to every detail, you should be able to figure it out. Which the bulk of that intense Reddit community did, which was a sign that it worked.
Right.
Because I would say that for regular viewers, I would say maybe 20% of people figured it out. But for that Reddit group, they had got it on lock. They saw all the little details, all the little clues, and everything.
One of the things I felt watching it now, and this could be, I talked about this with Joyce before, but I was like, I just love Jasper and I love Ben so much, and he's so engaging. And I wonder how much did you guys get away with, maybe for like the 20% of me, not a Reddit nut. I was like, I don't want to believe it's Jasper, and I didn't want to believe that it was Ben because he's so likable. And how much of that was like, did you guys bend with that or play with that in the edit even and stuff to make him like, because he's such a good character. He's so great. I'm like, oh, bring him back. Season 2. Come on. He was fine. Xavier,
I know he pitched it the Hannibal Lecter style.
Oh, he pitched me that. He pitched me that as a day one. Like, here's my pitch. How can I be in this? You gotta go to the mind of a killer to figure out who a killer is. And I'm like, oh, yeah, maybe. But yeah, no, there was definitely like, I think people, he's such a goofball, and he's such a sweetheart in real life, and in real life he's a goofball and a sweetheart, and on the show he's the same, and you love him the way that you love him in real life, and we certainly were playing with that. You wouldn't think that the dramatic move of a killer is this goofball. Spoilers, everyone. Hopefully there's a spoiler warning.
He's also so emotionally, like, character is also so emotionally vulnerable, like, throughout, right? Like, he's really, like, hard on sleeve, so you really empathize with him. He wants so badly to connect with this guy and to make a song with him, and it's like, you're not thinking the whole time, like, that's a murderer,
right?
But
what's cool about Ben is that he's so versatile, and so he's got so many gears as an actor that people don't know about. So being able to expose people to that side of him as as an actually vulnerable and raw and not goofy performance that he gives, especially in the finale, is what makes it a big surprise, because people haven't really seen that side of him, most people anyway, and he's got it, and he's really, really good.
It really makes you want to never trust the sweet guy that you know again.
And that's the goal.
I think we intentionally picked takes of his that were not, a little off. We made him as normal as possible. So, and we didn't want to tip it off at all. I mean, throughout the series, we just intentionally picked the. I know he's funny, but the least
suspicious
pieces of him that we could. Yeah,
it's true. And we were trying to protect for that, where you want to go like, okay, this is the person that you want to consider and then reject, and then be hoping that it isn't him. So you're just gonna think, well, maybe it's this other person, or maybe it's this other person.
It also kind of makes sense because he's like trying to protect Annie, because he didn't expect him to become
right
the main suspect.
It is true. More people suspected Zoe, which was interesting. Like people that she was the number one suspect for most people, which I think is interesting.
I kept going to Culp because I was like, he's such a super fan of Xavier. I was like, maybe
you know what? You're not the only one. A lot of people thought I was Culp also, because you're like, there's something going on with this guy. He's a fan of the guy, and he's the one who turned off the video feed of the security camera.
You have that great moment when he's texting, when that's another reason why it's a great way, the way it's edited, I think, too, and the takes, because like Xavier is texting, or he's turning off, he's deleting the footage, as we find out later. But when he's going to make his like problematic tweet about police brutality or whatever, it's such a funny take and it's such a funny joke. You're laughing. You don't even realize that he obviously has a second phone that he's using.
And also the shower scene when he's like recording,
right.
It has
but you're thrown off because you're like, oh, that's really funny. Like just
yes, well, that's one great advantage of doing murder mystery as a comedy, because you're constantly in a murder mystery trying to give clues but misdirect people and hide that it's a clue. And if you're doing something, you're like, well, that's weird, why did they linger on this wastebasket or whatever? It's obvious, but if you can hide it in a joke, the audience are like, oh, that's why that's there, is because it was a joke. They thought it was funny, so they kept it in. So it's a great crutch to hide clues in, is hiding in a joke. And that police brutality joke was a line that Phil Lord wrote, my producing partner, and it was one of those things where it was like, this is too suspicious what he's doing right now. We need a better joke for this moment so that people don't look at the phone. And just having great, smart people around is what helps make the thing work.
Mm-hmm. We unfortunately have to wrap. I could do this all day, really, but I know Chris has an issue with a certain lyric.
Oh, yes, thank you.
Yeah.
No, Jack, I love all the songs, but the West Wing.
What is it? What is it?
After Sorkin left, not bad. I thought the I love Santos. I'm weighing on him.
We need everyone's thoughts on West Wing seasons 5 through 7.
The final season of that. Okay, we can also pound that off on John LaJoy. That is a John LaJoy special. So you have to take it up with the friendly Canadian. But
if John had called me with the joke, I probably would have said, I kind of agree, but I really do like the Santos stuff, and they were really prescient. They kind of predicted Obama, and you got to give them that. And even though it didn't have the patter or the sophistication of the Sorkin years, it did continue the torch. And then I probably would have said, "That's a great fucking joke, and you have to put it in because it's so good." I don't know. That one stood out for me.
I will say that Daniel Pemberton, who did the score and was involved in the producing of those songs, did the score for the Aaron Sorkin movie about Lucille Ball, and he showed Aaron that song and said, "You might want to see this." And when he showed it to Sorkin, he just laughed and was like, "All right." All right.
I'm sure he loved it. I mean, it's a massive Sorkin compliment.
It really is.
Amazing.
But anyway, well, thank you so much for having us. This was super fun. The only thing I like more than making the show is talking about the show. And so it was good to spend some time with you.
Of course. Thank you so much. Again, how great was this panel? So
I would say A+.